Now, Israelis today, they're all set to vote for the fifth time in 4 years. Polls will open at 7 a.m. local time. Every election has unmasked how complex politics has become in Israel. The people's views, highly polarized. Parties don't see eye to eye, and prominent leaders face corruption charges. So how will this time be any different? Our correspondent Jody Cohen decodes key players for you, and if Benjamin Netanyahu could pull off a comeback. Take a look.
The last election was significant as it produced the first government in 12 years not headed by Benjamin Netanyahu. However, after only 1 year, Israel's most diverse coalition in the country's history lost its majority, with Prime Minister Bennett stepping aside to interim PM Lapid. Netanyahu's party is expected again to win the most seats, but numerous polls suggest continued deadlock, with neither side able to form a 61-seat majority. The deciding factor could be some of the smaller parties, including perhaps those on the extremes of both sides of the political spectrum. On the right, that would include the Religious Zionist Party, or RZP, whose policies include expelling Arab Israelis who express support for terrorists and the death penalty for terrorists themselves. On the left, that could include a party called Hadash-Tal, whose representatives most recently referred to 5 slain members of the Lion's Den terror group as martyrs. There are numerous smaller parties that are struggling to cross the electoral threshold. These include, for example, Jewish Home on the right and Meretz on the left. But if they do manage to take some seats, they're expected to do so at the expense of the bigger parties on the right and left respectively, so that wouldn't necessarily sway the result. While repeated polls predict former Prime Minister Netanyahu as being able to pull together a coalition of 60 and interim PM Lapid 56, with possible support from Hadash-Tal making it also 60, the current Defence Minister Benny Gantz could end up as the kingmaker or even as Prime Minister himself. His centre-right party is expected to attract many former Likud voters who aren't comfortable with the inclusion of the Religious Zionist Party, and also centrist supporters for whom security is a top priority.
Now, for more on this, we were earlier joined by Amichai Stein from Jerusalem. Stein is diplomatic correspondent at Israel Khan TV. Let's listen in.
So first of all, it's the first election that Netanyahu isn't running as a prime minister. In the last 4 elections, Netanyahu ran as a prime minister. This time, he's the head of the opposition. And this makes things a lot different. Because first of all, Netanyahu, it's very funny. He was a prime minister for 12 years, but suddenly he presents things that he can do in 1 month that he didn't do in these 12 years. It's much more easier for a politician to promise. And you said a right statement, because in the recent days, the issue of the security of the Israeli public has become the main focus, because we've seen in recent days a lot of shooting attacks by Palestinian terrorists against Israelis in several areas. And this brings to a focus in the last hours before polling opens, the issue of security. And this is usually much more better for the right in Israel when it comes to security issues. And you pointed out the party of Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, 2 far-right Israeli politicians that are doing amazingly good in the polls. They're doing 15 MPs right now. Right at this point, they have about 8 or even less in this is the way they began this election race. So they have 15 MPs. The number might go even up. They're right now fighting between them and the Likud to get as much votes as they can. It's a very interesting race because Netanyahu doesn't want them to be that strong. He does want them in his coalition, but he doesn't want them as a big party. So it's a very interesting race even between the right itself, not just between the blocks of the left and right, but also in the right itself. Will Netanyahu have suddenly a party that he will have to listen to, as opposed to him ruling a coalition when he doesn't usually listen to his partners?
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.